We're going to go quickly here. The last half of the book deals with climate apocalypse events. You've heard it all: increased toenail fungus, increased poison ivy. Let's start. We'll go through some of these quickly. Next. So I live in the real world. So what I've done is the climate alarmists use climate models that can't effectively measure climate to predict climate apocalypse events in the future. Well, what I did in the book and here, we'll look at what's actually occurring in the real world, what's actually happening, and I'll argue that if we're going to see some of these negative events, shouldn't we see some indication of that now? Next. And again, these are climate models in red, 100 climate models that over-predict warming from the actual numbers by 2.5, 3 times in the tropics. So again, climate models that can't model climate. Next. And again, I posted this on LinkedIn on Groundhog Day, that actually Punxsutawney Phil has a better record of predicting temperatures than what the climate modelers do. So next. Great slide. This is from NASA, and most of the information's from NASA, NOAA, and the others. This shows the greening of the Earth. More than 50% of the Earth is prospering, is greening, vegetation's increasing. Only 4% is browning. That's a good trade-off. 50% getting greener. Most importantly is the Southern Sahara, and I want anybody out there with an iPhone, Google NASA greening in Sahara and see what you get. Next. Up to 300,000 square kilometers in the Southern Sahara, former desert, are turning into a lush grassland. Gazelles, even amphibians are moving back in there. This is a great story that should be trumpeted, and you're not going to hear about it. So again, Google NASA greening in Sahara and see what you find. Next. So we see that hunger and famine is proposed as one of the climate apocalypse. Let's take a look. Is that so? Next. So we see here, these are grain production. I'm not going to argue that temperature and increasing temperature and rising CO2 are the sole cause of increasing food, but it sure hasn't hurt. And we see this time and time again. So it's a combination of CO2 fertilization, rising temperatures. Next. And again, corn production is going up in relationship to CO2. Next. Part of that is attributed to a trend in lengthening of growing seasons. So more crops can be planted, more plantings can be made. Killing frosts end earlier in the spring and arrive later in the fall. Next. And again, CO2 is plant food. This is a chart. The full chart is in the book. It shows that an increase of 300 parts per million of CO2 will lead to a 46% increase in food production, crop weight. That's a good thing. That's something that you've never heard, perhaps, or you've heard about it, but the mainstream media will not tell you. We're able, because of CO2 increases in rising temperature, and here with CO2 alone, we're going to be able to feed a hungry population and a growing population, and that's really a good thing. Next. We also hear that, and just about every alarmist declares that droughts are going to be a significant impact. We see the droughts and others are decreasing because soil moisture increase has been increasing, and the experts tell us it's because of climate change. I know it sounds counterintuitive. Droughts are in long-term decline. And next, even the most significant and severe droughts of the 20th century, we see 30 of them here. Nearly all of those occurred prior to 1960. So we have rising temperatures, increasing CO2, but yet droughts, the big severe droughts, are declining. Next.